Morning, everybody. I'm on my morning stroll. Would you know who? Can't have a video. I feel so bad. I do. I don't know why. I feel so bad. Like I should be out working or doing something, but I feel so bad if I don't take her out for a walk. If I don't have her in a video as well. Really do. So, there's a very funny. There was a very funny incident years and years ago of an Irish porter or lift operator in a hotel turning to George Best. And George Best was at the height of his powers, at the height of his masculinity, athleticism, beauty, elegance, Irish humour, soft-spoken. Oh, Northern Ireland, I think we all loved Northern Ireland accent. And the Irish porter turned to him and said, "Where did it all go wrong?" George Best is his eyes are going up to heaven. He's won 25 grand cash at the casino, and he is taking the elevator to the penthouse with the newly crowned Miss World. So where did it all go wrong? I guess my abnormality of where it all went wrong went on my birth cert. So I still find this. Oh, sorry guys for that. But so on the birth cert it says father's occupation, hairdresser. Mother's occupation, building contractor. Oh goodness, you couldn't make this stuff up. And my full name is Rory Desmond Peter Mary Connolly, with the devotion to Our Lady. Something which I used to look at as humorous, but I think it's a lovely devotion now. I really do. So, being a builder's son, mother or father, but being a builder's son, I was born and raised in building sites effectively, and it was an integrated part of my life forever, because it wouldn't be unusual to my father knew a couple of politicians, and they were big into playing poker. Poker was a big thing in our house. On Saturday nights they'd go to friends' houses or they'd come to our houses, and there'd always be a couple of politicians might be there. A couple of my father's friends were very big builders and well connected, so don't need to say which party they were connected to back in the day, but so wouldn't be unusual to see a couple of politicians on a Saturday night, and then on a Monday morning 7:30 to see labourers, carpenters, plasterers coming in and out of the house. And it was a duplicity that I was always exposed to from a very early age of extremes, but I had no idea the extremeness of it. And I had a growing unconscious awareness of it, but I had no analytical framework because I had nothing to compare it to. I kind of thought it was slightly unusual. But one of my best friends, his father was an electrician. Very, very clever man, lovely man, Paddy. Very determined, very fierce. And my father mirrored him in a lot of ways. But I had no idea about situationalness. How could I? I was a kid who was protected and taken care of by his parents in South County Dublin. So my first time in the building site was like shock therapy. You cannot describe words for it because there is no words for it. The French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, phenomenal insight, phenomenal intelligent man, a traditionalist in his revolutionary thoughts. He seeks people not to become Lacanian, but to actually be Freudian with different lenses. And why am I saying this? Because he had one notion called the situational reel. And the reel is where we come to events and circumstances, occurrences, where I guess it's where it hits the fan and it hits our subconscious and it hits our psyche, and that's what kind of happened to me. It's beyond language. There is trauma involved. There's a big void, a big void, disconnect from our reality, and yet there's sheer joy in it. And all of those were occurrences and emotions and signals that I got from my first time on a building site. The shock of it. It was down a small laneway off Mount Merrion Avenue, and my father had gone down through old world Irish style. My father had gone down to price a broken window that a guy, and my father explained to him, well, look, I'll drop by, have a look, but I don't really do these small jobs. The guy had a small little outhouse slash stable at the back of his house, and my father came home with a deal. I wouldn't recommend it as a quantity surveyor, but he came back with a deal to put a muse in there, and they signed the deal that night by, I think the guy was an engineer. So that was my first job, and looking back on it, there was plasterers, a family called Kavanagh's from Shankill, lovely people, and Beach Hill in Dundrum, I think. Beach Hill, down by the mental hospital. But they were from around that area, and it was the first time that I started to see interactions with people. I started to see leadership interactions, financial interactions, and it was, the bubble was burst, and you started to see situational leadership. You started to see that parents take on different roles outside the house. You start to see that the sweet, kind, lovely man who's your father and who's your hero is even more of a hero because he goes out to war every day. And that's what it was. Margins were so low. Confrontation was not unusual. And my father was a little bit of he was a large framed man. He was an Ulster champion, mid heavyweight boxing champion. He didn't take a back step. He was full of belief, full of courage, full of dignity. He treated people with respect and honesty, but he also the family to feed. He had to protect us, look after us, and get things done. And he was a hard taskmaster. And it was intriguing to me because I'd never seen this side. And yet I also know that he was taking care of the guys as well. And he did so many good deeds. There was a little old lady down on Anglesey Road, and he used to send men down every time that he had a couple of guys free. He'd send them down to her house to do work in it and wouldn't charge them anything. So he, in effect, what he did was he held everybody to the standards that he expected of himself. And yes, you could even see within that there was relationships. He treated the subcontractors better and with more dignity than he treated some of the guys that he worked with or worked for him. The clients and the hierarchy That always fascinated me. The reverence and the exchange between the client and the builder was very different than the exchange between the client and the subcontractors. More or less the same, I guess, but definitely than the labourers. So I started to see hierarchies. I started to see situational leadership. I started to see outside the bubble. I started to see deadlines and real stress and strain. I started to see that I wasn't automatically accepted. Far from it. That there was friction. But I, at the age of 13, you're aware of friction, and you're aware of subgroups, and you're aware of splitting, and you're aware of group dynamics. You may not have the language, but to actually get this taste, and it took me a while to be analytical about it, but how privileged I was. That's a word that kind of sticks a little bit in my throat, because I didn't think I was privileged, because everybody I knew had what we had, or more, or less, or more or less. And even the people that had more and more and more certainly didn't show it. And even people that less and less and less certainly didn't show it. So as far as I was concerned, we had the same. But that was not the truth. So I was meeting guys, meeting extraordinary things. During the strike of the buses in the early 70s, my dad was going collecting his guys, and we were going out to Ballymont flats and collecting them. Lovely, lovely fellas. Wonderful stories about them getting their first houses up in Tala, and crying brings tears to me. Genuinely seen a fully grown man crying when he gets a telephone call from his wife because there was no mobiles. And poor lady was so frantic with joy that they'd got their house up in Tala. And the bittersweetness of his brother, who had to wait another 2 years before they got their house. So you saw extraordinary things. Back in the old day, your man, one of the guys when that happened asked my dad for a bottle of whiskey to celebrate. I don't even know if he got home, but I do know one thing: he wasn't in work for a couple of days. Oh goodness, they were different times, but the dynamics are still the same. Still situational leadership. There's still relationship hierarchies. There's still tough and rumble of the reality of the real, which is symbolic, but is actually beyond words, beyond language. It's like hitting a wall. There is the reality of privilege, the nostalgicness of going and being called down to Blackrock, meeting a lovely couple, couldn't meet nicer people, who were doing a refurbishment of their Georgian red brick, about a third down Mount Marion Avenue, and turned out it was the same house that my father had done the muse in years later. So that kind of felt a real full circle for me. Appreciation needed. I've had ups and downs in my life like everybody, but I do know that they've been cushioned by the privilegedness and hard work of my parents. So there was a different universe out there. Money mattered. I'd never really known that money mattered. I had never... money wasn't part of my world. That was something that my parents gave me. And I have a vague memory of £3 a day, which would have been £21 a week. Vague memory of that, which would have been a colossal amount of money for a kid who effectively was only buying ice pops. It would have been a lot of jack ices. Oh God, when you think about it. Sure, my parents had probably given after me earning, and I was working, but effectively it was about role modelling. It was about introduction to the real world. It was about mentoring. It was about time and proximity. And I made cleverest decision I ever made in my life was when I left college. Others were heading to London to get work and to get jobs, and I was driving around in the van with my father, turning his business around for 2 years before I went to the States. And I kind of felt like an honour, a debt. And my father was a great builder, but he wasn't. It's very hard. It's very, very hard to run a business and to run a project. So incremental slippage occurs, and also then you can have incremental turnarounds, and that's what occurred. And my father was great because he had such a great client base. It was relatively easy to turn things around. Didn't need much, needed leverage, pricing strategy, a little bit of marketing, and because the brand was already truly and utterly ingrained. The funniest thing, talking about brand, my father was his own brand. He had a big, loud Northern Ireland accent, and he was a big, strong, handsome looking man. But he was also extremely gentle. All of these paradoxicalness, they all rolled into a man that you can't copy. You can't try to evaluate yourself. It's just not possible. But the one thing he was an utter gentleman, absolute gentleman. And he used to go down to the shops in Mount Marion. Super Value, I think they were H. Williams before their pensions were rifled. But he would go on down and he knew everybody. And what we'd do is we'd do the shopping, myself and the brother, usually, or one of us. It was quicker to walk back home, 1.5 miles up the hill, than it was to wait for him, because he could be shopping for 3 or 4 hours. Honest to God, he'd meet everybody and talk about a marketing campaign. The guy would come out with more work. He'd come out with more work than and the other marketing place that he got a lot of work for, and it certainly wasn't by design, was from the church. Down every morning. And the discipline, the century of that, the peace and calmness of it, the routine of it, the structure of it, the reflectiveness of it, I think actually really, really looked after his mental health. And it's not coincidental that his pastime was pretty much the same as mine, walking. That's not coincidental. So I learned a huge amount being a builder's son. An awful lot of it absolutely brilliant, an awful lot of it tough, an awful lot needed. One of the most touching things was that when I did graduate from college and I was working with my father, actually to see how moved and joyous people were for me, because they could actually see that Rory had an option, and whatever life unfolded in front of them, little did I know this, I could sense their joy and pride for me and happiness for me. But at 20 odd, you don't fully understand the exponentialness of education and the gateways that it opens up. So they're the lessons, my initial lessons I learned. And I guess it's taken me a lifetime to actually, it's not great, is it? I guess it's taken me a lifetime to actually verbalize some of those lessons. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sharing your time. Take care.